Welcome to Charts Today Europe. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 16th of October, comes to you from London. We start by looking at the dollar. Dollar's actually just flattening a little bit over the last day or so. It has been falling, of course. We've got these downside targets on the short-term chart. We are bearish short-term, but medium-term still bullish. So this is the dollar index, of course. Taking a look at the euro, we see that the euro is looking stronger against the dollar and is on the verge of making this transition into medium-term bullish. So it's an interesting time. Japanese yen is actually also weaker against the dollar this morning, so we are seeing dollar weakness here, but in the short term as well. But it is looking like it's starting to turn. Sterling sitting at 131 did weaken at the end of last week on the Brexit situation. This morning we're rising and we've still got upside targets, so sterling looking stronger. And against the euro, sterling is still bearish, but medium term we have made this transition, so it is pricing in a deal still, despite what we hear in the news. Bitcoin jumped yesterday, but is still looking pretty bearish in the medium term. U.S. stocks fell mostly yesterday. We saw the S&P still looking bearish below the cloud here, and it's starting to look quite worrying. The longer we hang around below this cloud on the lagging line, the more that's telling us to sell. If we make new lows, that activates a downside target on the short-term chart, some 11% lower. So we're certainly not out of the woods yet. The Nasdaq was down as well yesterday, and we're looking bearish below the cloud here as well. And the Dow was down as well. Actually, here finding some support on the cloud, but given the other indices position, and we look at the Russell 2000, looking bearish here as well. The futures this morning, we're seeing the futures up, the S&P future up 0.5%, the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.75%. But again, these charts are still looking bearish in the medium term. The FTSE is actually opened down slightly this morning, and again looking pretty bearish, and that long-term chart turning bearish is a big concern after last week's move. And if we look at the FTSE 250, the UK mid caps, that's also looking worrying. So it's hard to be bullish and positive about the markets with this chart outlook at the moment. The DAX is actually up 0.4% this morning, but again looking bearish, and that long-term chart is a worry. The CAC 40, which was the best looking European market, hasn't turned bearish yet, but on the long-term chart, but medium term we're starting to see that, and we're right on support at the moment. Hard to see the CAC actually bucking the trend with other markets all looking so bad. The Japanese market was up overnight, so we have seen a little bit of an improvement there, the weaker yen helping. And the Hang Seng also is looking very bullish, and that long-term chart starting to get quite worrying as well. Downside targets now some 10% lower, so that is a concern. And really the major one, which has been worrying us all year, is Chinese stocks hitting new lows again, new 4-year lows, activating this big downside target here with these lows we've seen in the last week or so. So it looks like Chinese stocks still could collapse. That's been our concern pretty much all year, and then the contagion that leads to globally. The Indian market was actually up overnight, but still looking bearish on that short and medium term chart. And the Aussie market also dived last week, but actually just did find a little bit of support. Taking a look at commodities, Brent crude is down about 0.3% this morning, so we are still bearish on the short-term chart. We do have a downside target to 78.80. WTI also down 0.4% and looking bearish on the short-term chart. US nat gas holding its strength at 328. That's one of the things that is breaking the mold there. And taking a look at sugar, we see here it's looking pretty good short and medium term, so soft commodities not looking as bad. Gold up again this morning, so we're seeing a resurgence in the yellow metal. Target of 1302, so that's some 6% higher, looking better there as well. Silver also looking stronger. US Treasury yields sitting at 3.17%, so still holding the medium-term picture, just short-term looking to recover. If we move above the 318, 319, we activate that 329 target. We're just going to be pushing higher all the time. And looking at German bonds this morning, the Bund is actually down slightly. So bond yields up, German bonds down. Taking a look at some of the stocks. And looking at Nasdaq overnight, first of all, we saw that quite a few stocks selling off. Apple down 2%, holding on to the bullish positions on the charts here, though. And if you look at Amazon, also down 1.5%, just holding its bullish position, still outperforming the Dow by 45% this year. Taking a look at Google, though, Google still looking quite worrying, and that medium-term chart very different, and Google really only performing in line with the market. And if we take a look at some of the other stocks in the news, Tesla. This data all coming from Yahoo, by the way. So this is my weekly long-term charts, my daily with on-balance volume and a relative strength normalized. So it starts at 100 this year, so I can see that we've underperformed. Tesla's underperformed the Dow by 20% this year. 250 is still the critical level on Tesla, so we'll need to keep an eye on that. Taking a look at Netflix, down 1.89%. Still massively outperformed the market this year, some 60% outperformance, but starting to look worrying on that medium-term chart. Microsoft, sad news, Paul Allen died at the night, so Microsoft actually still holding its long-term trend and medium-term, has outperformed the market some 23% this year as well. Taking a look at UK stocks, this morning the leaders are Ocado up 4.78%. Putting that into the context of the chart, still has fallen away quite sharply. Ocado, no clear downside targets. We did have this downside target given way back at over 1,000, and that was at 817, and that's nearly been met. In fact, that's kind of where we went to. Will we find support here? Too early to say. Still have outperformed the market very sharply this year with the big jumps that we saw in May, so it's no surprise that we're unwinding there. Pearson's up quite strongly this morning, so that's interesting seeing that, and the relative is performed quite well there, but the medium-term chart's still a worry. Taking a look at the, in fact, Royal Mail been in the news a lot lately, up 1% this morning, but this chart is forever changed, and if we see new lows, that's just going to activate a 50% downside target. We've underperformed the market some 25% versus the Dow there. And taking a look at the bad performers this morning, Johnson Matthey down 3%, and that chart looking pretty bearish, the long-term chart turning bearish, and M&S down 1.7%. So we're seeing that bearish showing up in the charts as well. Tesco's, we're seeing a little bit of a theme here with stores really being the ones below, and again, price falling lower there. Just a quick look at European stocks, taking a look at the Stock 600. Interestingly, the top performers here are Kern Group in Germany. That's looking pretty bad on the charts, but actually up some 8% this morning. Not enough to reverse the trend. Meggitt in the UK looking stronger this morning, but again just below the cloud in the medium term. Ocado we've already looked at. But interestingly, we are seeing even recovery in stocks in Milan, Enel, electricity group up, but still looking pretty bearish on the charts. And if we take a look at the worst performers, we've got Merlin Entertainment down 7%. Volvo, we're seeing car makers really struggling lately. Volvo down 5%. So we are just seeing quite big falls still happening in the market. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.